Hello, in this video, I will cover the essentials of using a calculator, how to perform basic mathematical operations, and how to use some scientific functions which appear on a scientific calculator. Let's start with these examples. We've got an evaluation question right here. We need to evaluate this. So you can see these are some numbers with decimal point. We've got subtraction, we've got parentheses, and we've got multiplication. For the mathematical operations, you're going to see them here on the right hand side. So you've got multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. Let's try to enter this into the calculator. 25.3 minus, we open a bracket, the brackets are right here, 5.1 multiplied by 4.5. We close the bracket, and to evaluate this, we need to hit the equal. So equals, it gives me the answer 47/20, which is a fraction. If they need the answer in decimal, then to convert this fraction into decimal, you've got to use this button. It says standard to decimal. So if I hit it, I can go from fractions to decimal. I can always go back to fractions by hitting the same button. All right, so this is equal to 2.35 in decimal. All right, let's go to the next question. You can see that it involves a fraction. How do we enter fractions into a scientific calculator? Before we can learn how to do this, I need to clear all of this. To clear all of this, I use AC, which stands for all clear. So I'm going to clear it. And now to enter the fraction, you've got a button which is dedicated to fractions. And you can see it here. If I click it, I can enter the numerator and the denominator. So I'm going to start by entering the numerator, which is the top of the fraction. We've got 4.3 multiplied by 1.2. And to get to the bottom of the fraction, which is the denominator, you're going to be using these arrows. I need to go down, so I'm going to use the bottom arrow. Now I can enter the numbers. You've got 13.7 minus 5.1. I'm done with this. I can just hit the equal sign and I get the answer, which is 3/5. Again, this is a fraction. If they require you to enter the answer as a decimal, all you've got to do is hit the S to D to convert the fraction into decimal. You can always convert back and forth. So this is equal to 0.6. Let's go to more examples. We've got 2/3 multiplied by 5.5. These are mixed fractions. You've got a number and a proper and just a fraction. So to enter these into your calculator, of course, we've got to hit all clear first. And instead of hitting this button, if you look on top of it, you're going to see that you've got a template for a mixed fraction. And to activate that, whatever is on top of a button, you can see that it's in a brown. So I have to hit the shift, which is in a brown. So brown goes with a brown. If you've got something in red, to activate it, you've got to hit the alpha, which is in red. So red goes with red, brown goes with a brown. So since this is in a brown, I'm going to hit the shift, and then I'm going to click on here, and it's going to give me the template to enter a mixed fraction. So I've got 2.1/3. To move to these slots, you've got to use these arrows. So I'm going to go to the right, and I can enter the 1. I need to go to the bottom, so I'm going to use the bottom arrow, and I'm going to put the 3. I need to put the operation, so I have to move to the right. So I'm going to hit the right. All right, I hit it multiple times. Got to hit it only once. All right, so I'm going to put the multiplication, and I need to enter another mixed fraction. So again, I've got to hit the shift, and I go to the fraction. It's going to enter the template for me. I can enter 5, go to the right, enter the 1, you go to the bottom, enter the 2, and then you hit equal. And I'm going to give you the answer. The answer to this is 77/6. Again, If you want to convert it into a decimal, you've got to hit the S to D. However, sometimes they're going to ask you to enter it as a mixed fraction, since the operations at the beginning, they were originally in mixed fractions. So they might ask you to put the final answer in a mixed fraction. And to do so, can you see the S to D? All right. On top of it, you can convert a mixed fraction into a usual fraction, standard fraction, and vice versa. And you can see that they are in brown. So I had to activate this by hitting the shift, and then I go to here. I can convert from just an improper fraction into a mixed fraction. So you see that the answer here is a 12 and 5/6. All right. And you can always go back by hitting the shift and this again. All right. So the answer is 12 and 5/6. All right. How about if we've got a number and this number is raised to a power? For example, I've got 12.4 and it's raised to the power of 2. It's squared. Let's clear all of this. I'm going to enter 12.4. And to raise it to the power 2, you can see that there is a button which is dedicated to that, x to the power of 2. So when you click on this, this number is going to be raised to the power of 2. All you've got to do is hit the enter key and you get the number. All right. So this is the number. They wanted it in decimal. I can just click on S to D and it's going to convert it to decimal to me. So 153.76 in decimal. All right, how about if I've got a number and it's not raised to the power of 2? For example, it's raised to the power of 3 or it's raised to the power of 5, like in this case. Well, there is a button which is dedicated to entering any power, which is the one which is next to it, x to the power of a blank. So in this blank, you can enter whatever power you want. Let's try this out. I've got 2 to the power of 5. You enter the 2, and then you go to this. You can enter the 5, and then hit equal. And it's going to give you the number, which is 32. All right, let's move on. How about if we've got a square root? Well, a square root is right here. Okay, so if I enter the square root, it's going to write it down for me, and all I have to do is enter the number. So you've got 45,796. Hit equal, and it's going to give you the answer to the square root of that number, which is equal to 214. How about it's not the square root that I want? I want the cube root, or I want a root of a different degree. Well, let's try the cubic root. The cubic root, it is available here, just on top of the square root. And you can see that it is in brown. So to activate it, you've got to use the shift. So let's clear everything. And then hit shift, and then click on here. You can see that this is the cubic root. All you've got to do is enter the number 343 equals, and it's going to give you the answer, which is equal to 7. How about if I don't want the square root, I don't want the cube root, I want another root of a different degree? Well, you've got that option as well, and to find it, it is on top of the x to the power of blank, which is right here. All right, so I'm going to go blank, and then I'm going to hit shift, and I'm going to click on this, and you can see that it gives you the chance to enter the degree of the root, and you can enter the number as well. So here, I need to enter 6. So I'm going to just type in 6. Then I'm going to move using the arrows to the right and enter my number, which is 855. 855. Click on equal, and it gives you the number. This number has been rounded to 2 decimal places, so 3.08. Let's move on. How about if we've got a log function? Now you can see here that this log does not have any base written. So by default, if you've got a log that does not have any base written here, this is base 10, all right? And you're going to see it exactly the same on the calculator. You've got a log and it does not have any base written. This is by default base 10. So if I need to enter log 1000, I'm going to clear everything. I'm going to hit the log, and I'm going to type in the 1000, So 1,000. I'm going to close the parenthesis because it opened a parenthesis for me. And then I'm going to hit the equal. And the answer is a 3. Because 10, which is the base which is not written, 10 to the power of 3 is going to give me 1,000. All right, so the answer to this is 3. Let's go to if we need to find the log to the power of a certain base. Like in this case, this is log to the base of 2 of this number. How can we type in this into our calculator? Well, you've got another button, which is this button. Well, this button is the log that is of base 10. This is the log of any base. So if I click on it, you can enter the base that you want. So in my case here, I've got the base 2. I'm going to type in 2, and then I'm going to move using the right arrow to enter the number, which is 4,096. Click on equal, and it's going to give you the number. The number is 12. You've got another type of log, which is the natural logarithm. We call it ln. And you've got that one in a separate button as well. So this button is for the natural logarithm. It's a log that has e, which is like a constant value, as its base. So log to the base e is simply abbreviated as ln. All right. So ln of 3, all you've got to do is hit ln and then type in the number 3. Don't forget to close the parentheses, equal, and it's going to give you the number. So the number is 1.1. In this case, we rounded it to 1 decimal place. Okay, so you've got here 0, and the number like after it is 9, so you've got to round the 0 up to 1. So it's 1.1. All right, how about convergence? Write 0.36 as a fraction. Well, the first step is to enter 0.36 into the calculator. 0.36. This is the number. Now, how do I convert it into a fraction? Let's try just hitting the equal sign. If you simply hit the equal sign, then this number is converted into a fraction. This is the answer. 9/25. All right. How about if I need to convert a fraction into a decimal? All right. Let's say that I've got this fraction, which I can enter it using the fraction template. You've got 9. You go down over 20. I need to convert this into a decimal. Let's hit the equal. Nothing happens. It just writes it again for me. Now, you remember, to convert into a decimal, we hit this key, which is S to D. So if I click on this, it's going to convert the 9/20 into a decimal for me. And this is the answer. So simply, if you've got a decimal and you want to convert it into a fraction, just enter the decimal into the calculator and hit the equal sign. It is going to convert it to you into a fraction. If you've got a fraction and you need to convert it into decimal, then you click on this button. More examples. You've got the question that says, write 67% as a decimal and again as a fraction. So in this case, we've got a percentage. 67%. How do we enter a percentage into our scientific calculator? Let's start by typing in the 67. Well, the percentage, you can find it on top of the open parenthesis. Can you see this open bracket? On top of it, there is a percentage sign, and it's a brown. So you can activate it by hitting the shift, and then you click here. So you see 67%. Now, if we hit the equal, it is going to convert it into a fraction. So 67/100. This is the answer to this part. And of course, to convert a fraction into a decimal, I can simply hit this key and I can convert it into a fraction, into a decimal. All right, so 67%, basically we know that 67% is a 67/100, okay, which what we got initially. And to convert this into a decimal, even without a calculator, you can just move the decimal point into the right, the decimal point like 2 places to the left to get the 0.67. All right. Okay, so this is how to enter the percentage into the calculator. Shift and the percent sign here. Okay, another question. It says, write 0.375 as a percentage. Now, if we want to convert something into a percentage, we've got to multiply this by 100. So I'm going to enter my number, which is 0.375. And to convert it into a percentage, I'm just simply going to multiply it by 100. And this is the answer. It's a 75 over 2%, or you can convert the 75 over 2. So this is 37.5%. So converting this number into a percentage, you just multiply it by 100. All right? And of course, you can do this without the calculator. You can just move the decimal point 2 places to the right, and this is going to give you the same answer. So the answer to this is 37.5% after multiplication by the 100. Okay, how about I've got fifth, 1 over 5. So this is a fraction, 1 over 5. I am going to convert it into a percentage, so I've got to multiply it by 100. I multiplied it by 100. I got 20. So the answer is 20%. All right, so whenever we got a number as a fraction or as a decimal, whatever, and we need to convert it into a percentage, all we've got to do is multiply it by 100. More questions. How about if they ask you, what is 70% of 45? A percentage of a number. Well, of, it translates in this case into multiplication. So this whole expression is 70% multiplied by 45. And that's what I'm going to enter into the calculator. Well, 70%, that is 70. The percentage sign is just on top of the open parentheses. I've got to activate it using the shift. So this is 70% of 45. This is multiplication by 45. And this is equal to 63 over 2, which if you want it in decimal, it becomes 31.5. All right, another example. What is 2/3 of 90? 2/3 of 90 translates into 2/3 multiplied by 90. So let's do it. This is a fraction, 2/3. Then I multiply it by 90. The answer is 60. So whenever you see a number or percentage, a fraction of another number, the of translates into multiplication. All right, here we've got ratios. Write the ratio 18 to 27 in its simplest form. Ratios usually are denoted by the colon sign, so you've got 2 dots on top of each other. But sometimes you can write ratios as fractions as well. So to convert this into its simplest form, you can enter it into the calculator as a fraction, and the calculator is going to convert it to you in its simplest form. So a fraction, 18 to 27, is the same as 18 over 27. This is the same as 2/3. So this is the simplest form. I can rewrite it using a column as 2 to 3. All right, solving equations. If you've got a quadratic equation, then you can solve it using a scientific calculator. Putting in mind that you've got to find the values of A, B, and C. And A is the coefficient of x squared. B is the coefficient of x. And C is the constant value which is not attached to any of x. So if we try to find A, B, and C for this equation, we can find out that A is equal to 1, B is equal to the 5, and C is equal to the 6. Now, how can we enter this into the calculator to solve for x? You're going to be using the mod. So you click on the mode, and then it's going to ask you what exactly do you want. We want to deal with equations. So this is number 5. You choose number 5. Which kind of equations I need quadratic equations. You can see that this is x to the power of 2. So this is number 3. And then you can enter your a, b, and c and get the values of x. So again, to solve quadratic equations, you've got to go to mode, and then you have to choose number 5 for equations. And then you've got to choose number 3 for quadratic equations. And then you can enter your A, B, and C. How do we enter A, B, and C? You have to type in the number, and to enter it, you've got to hit the equal. So A is equal to 1. I'm going to type in 1. To enter it, I'm going to hit equal. It's going to move for me to the next value, which is the B. B is equal to 5. To enter it, I hit equal. Then I go to the C, which is equal to 6. 6. Enter it. All of them are entered. Now, if you hit equal again, it's going to give you the values of x. So you've got x1 is equal to negative 2. This is one value of x that is going to satisfy this quadratic equation. You hit equal again, it gives you the other value of x, which is equal to negative 3. So since this is a quadratic equation, we've got two values which are going to satisfy the quadratic equation. And in our case, these are negative 2 and negative 3. Let's take another example on the same thing. So this is equal. This is another quadratic equation. So what we're going to do is go again. You can just go hit again mod 5-3, or you can just keep hitting equals till you get back to the screen. Now for the A, I'm going to enter 3 and equal. For B, I'm going to enter negative 11. And for C, I'm going to enter negative 4. I'm going to hit equal. And you can see that these are easily found by just checking the coefficients of these variables. So x squared, the coefficient of it is 3. B is the coefficient of x, this is negative 11, and C is the constant, this is negative 4. I entered all of them. Now I want the values of x. Hit the equal sign again, it gives you the first value of x, which is 4. Hit the equal sign again, it gives you the other value, which is negative 3. And these are the answers to the quadratic equations. You can also solve other types of equations, as we're going to be looking here. We've got simultaneous equations. We've got two equations in two different variables, x and y, and we need to find out what are the values of x and y that satisfy both equations. So how do we solve these simultaneous equations? Again, you go to mode, and we're dealing with equations, so you hit the 5. But we're not dealing with quadratic equations. We're dealing with the first one, simultaneous equations in two variables. So you hit number 1 to solve for simultaneous equations. And you can see here that you've got two rows. The first row is for the first equation. The second row is for the second equation. And what are the values of A, B, and C in this case? You've got to be really careful. The value of A, when we're dealing with simultaneous equations, this is the coefficient of x. The value of B is the coefficient of y. The value of C is the constant which appears on the right-hand side of the equation. It has to be on the other side. So for example, if the 8 was on this side as negative 8, you don't say that C is equal to negative 8. No, you've got to move it to the other side, and then you say the value of C is equal to positive 8. So these constants, they have to be on the other side of the equation, not along with the x and y. So I'm going to enter these numbers for the first equation. So you've got 2 as the coefficient of x, you've got 3 as the coefficient of y, and you've got the 8 as the constant on the other side for the first equation. We do the same thing for the other equation. We've got the 3 as the coefficient of x, we've got the 2 as the coefficient of y, and we've got the 7 as the constant, which is on the other side by itself. To solve these simultaneous equations, you hit the equal sign again. It gives you the value of x. So x is equal to 1 and y is equal to 2. These are the solutions. X equals to 1 and y equals to 2. These two values, if you plug them into either this equation or that equation, they're gonna satisfy it. So that's how to solve simultaneous equations. Now there is something important. You got into these modes. Now if I want to go and perform some like regular operation, how do I go back to the computation mode? Well, you go to mode, and then you've got to choose number 1 for computations. All right, so we're going to compute some like operations we need to get out of the mode of the equations by going to number 1. It takes you back to the original view where you can do your normal operations. Okay, how about if we've got some like triangles and we need to use some trig functions like sine, cosine, or tan. You can see that the sine, cosine, and tan, they exist right here. And we're going to take an example on how to use them. But before we go ahead, you've got to make sure that the mode of your calculator is in degree mode if you're using degrees, and it's in radian mode if you're using radians. So since we're dealing with degrees, we've got 46 degrees, we have to make sure that our calculator is set to degree mode. And you can see that there is a letter D here, which signifies that this is in degree mode. Now to change this, you've got to use the setup. And to use the setup, you've got to use the shift because you can see that it is brown. So shift and then the setup. And you can see here, if I hit the 3, then the calculator is going to be in degree mode. If I hit radians, then it is going to be in radian mode. So 3, you're going to see that this is degree. If I go back and I hit number 4, this is going to be in radian. You can see that there is the letter R here. But since in this example, I need degrees, so I'm going to go ahead and shift it back to degree. Okay. Now, finding the missing side, which is the x. I've got this angle, I've got the hypotenuse, I need to find the opposite. So what is the relationship between the opposite and the hypotenuse? This is definitely the sine function. So sine of 46 is equal to the opposite, which is x, over the hypotenuse. Now to find the value of x, all you've got to do is cross multiplication. So I need to multiply the 10 by the sine to get the value of the x. All right, so the value of the x is 10 sine 46. How do I enter this into the calculator? Well, easy peasy. All I've got to do is 10 multiplied by, you've got your sine here. It open parentheses for you. You put the 46. You don't need to put any degrees or anything, just the number. Close the parentheses, hit the equal sign, and it gives you the answer. So the answer is equal to 7.19 rounded to 2 decimal places. All right, so this is if we want to use the sine or cosine or tan of a number. How about for this example? They want us to find the missing angle. We don't know what is the angle. We've got the two sides. We've got the opposite to the angle, and we've got the adjacent. So this is definitely the tan function. Tan of x is equal to the opposite over the adjacent. Now, to find the x, which is inside the tan, you've got to use the inverse operation. You've got to use the inverse of tan, which is the tan inverse. So the value of x is going to be equal to tan inverse of this number. Tan inverse of this number. How do we enter it into our calculator? You can see that the inverse functions appear on top of these buttons. So sine, on top of it there is sine inverse, cosine, cosine inverse, etc. Now to activate those, we have to use the shift. So I need tan inverse. I'm going to hit the shift and I'm going to go to the tan. It gives me tan inverse. I've got to enter 6 over 5. So this is a fraction. You've got 6. You go down over 5. Then you go to the right. You close your bracket and hit equal. You get the answer. So this is the value of the angle x, and it is in degrees. So 50.19. This is rounded to 2 decimal places. And that's it for this video. I hope that everything was clear.